Our first one is a little bit, it's a bit of a light one. I've tried to make it as light as possible. I've taken a light angle on this week's government scrutiny week, where the government gets posed a bunch of questions by the opposition, and they have to answer. Well, they get asked questions, they don't answer, they just, I don't know what they do.
They just go around in fucking circles. And
Yeah, they retort.
Word vomit.
Yeah, word vomit, lie, feign ignorance, push it on to another minister. Yeah, so that's fun. But Kieran and the Bish, which is just a combination. I don't know if I've told you, but I have a theory, right? I think I was talking to someone on Discord about it last week. I have a theory, and this interaction kind of adds evidence to my theory, right? There is a photo. Obviously, the two of them were on breakfast every other morning, doing their little bromance back and forth. Kieran doing jabs, but it was very jovial, even though they both didn't. It was very friendly and jovial, which is quite different to what you get when you see Chloe and Brooke Van Velden or Chloe and David Seymour, and I feel so bad for her having to sit in the room with either of those two. It's quite a different vibe, and I have seen photos of Kieran and the Bish. It's a wee while ago, being co-leaders, can you believe, of the Parliament cricket team. So there's obviously like a relationship there that's kind of a bit of a rivalry. That kind of makes sense. You know, there's a lot of, Chris Bishop does give the vibe that he wants to have like that bipartisanship, even though I think his party is kind of, I don't know, got its own mind. And Kieran also has that idea of like he's able to work with the other side and like he's reasonable and things like that. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because there was a transport and infrastructure committee question and answer time where Kieran's on the opposition side asking the questions, and Chris Bishop is the transport and infrastructure minister, I believe, is giving answers. But unlike what we saw with giving answers. Unlike what we saw with Chloe and who was asking the questions that day?
Brian?
Against Brian?
Brian? Was it the...
No, in the committee. That's...
Oh, okay, different one. Too many fucking
Chloe. Yeah. Anyway, there was Chloe and the finance minister... Nikki Nobo, sorry, actually can't remember her name.
Nicola Willis.
Nicola Willis, thank you. Yep, that's
I love
bad.
that. That's great. That's great.
It's just what came first. Yeah, it's quite different to that interaction, and I'll just sort of play a bit of that here. And generally, what comes out of it is that they both agree there needs to be some kind of bipartisanship with the 30-year infrastructure plan, which makes total sense. Like the sector needs some reassurance that there's not going to be the stop and start. Things like big projects like the ferries aren't going to get cancelled, and they can be sure that there is budget that will be funded through not just this government, but the next government and the next government, and however many terms it.
Yeah.
Long-term planning, exactly. And we as a nation also want that. So that was a general consensus after it. But I found the back and forth quite interesting because Kieran is very respectful, and there's also a talk about sort of this political jabs and sort of unnecessarily making it political when it comes to stuff. And yeah, I want to show you the interaction because I feel like this adds evidence to my bromance theory, right? But I think it also shows, as much as people might hate this, but some of the qualities about Chris Bishop that I can see why people like him and sort of have some respect for him. And I can see why someone like Kieran, who's pretty straight shooting, he'll say what he thinks, can have that kind of bipartisan relationship, even though he even states himself, like, this government doesn't really want bipartisanship. It just wants the other side to agree with whatever they decide. But
which is
yeah,
pretty good point.
grains of salt, people. Grains of salt. So let's have a listen to this. I'll just play.
Oh.
I'm not sure. I know. I'm sorry. This is where we have to start.
Well, what needs to be in the plan?
Okay, hang on. I'm gonna back. Oh, why is it so tiny? How do I go? Okay, we'll go from here.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay.
How about you just give me an answer?
Well,
Work from there.
what's the question?
Well, what needs to be in the plan? Because at the moment, frankly, the attitude of some ministers of bipartisanship is we'll work with you if you agree with us.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's good enough. And so if we want to give the infrastructure sector some certainty, if there is going to be a genuine effort to limit any pausing or cancellation of projects moving forward, that there be work before decisions are made as opposed to an announcement later in the piece.
I mean, I've always said that if you can agree on, if we could get kind of broad agreement on kind of 80% of the pipeline and 80% of the policy settings, that'd be good. But I'm also realistic that political parties are going to disagree about infrastructure priorities up to a point. So just to take a practical example, if we're just being honest with ourselves, you know, the Greens are going to be more into cycling, without speaking for you, Julianne, but the Greens are going to be more into cycling than...
I didn't hear that the first time. I didn't hear what he said. Greens are more into something. Really?
Such a weird thing to bring up. Okay.
Like, really? That's...
Okay.
This is a bit of a side note, but it's also good to point out, like, this is the shit I hate about people attacking the Greens, is they minimize them so much. Like, no one takes them seriously, and it doesn't help that Labour also don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're not helping that at all. The Greens
Absolutely.
are more than just, you know, a bunch of greenies and environmental activists. Like, they have and always have been a socialist party. It's about people.
Oh,
and because
absolutely.
they're about people and tangata whenua, then obviously they're about environmental and the climate change side of things as well. Like, it all goes hand in hand. But this fucking comment, just really?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, strange thing to just bring up in general. Although I will say, from the beginning of when this started playing, some of the looks that Bish gives Kieran, it is giving like bromance fan edit. You know what I mean? Someone needs to make that fan edit.
Discord. We have a job for you. All right, let's continue.
than probably other parties. And that's fine, you know. We're probably going to be more into roads than maybe the Greens would. That's kind of fine. Like
What? No. Cycling is part of our roading infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
Public transport is a part of our roading infrastructure, because the more opportunities you give people that aren't cars, takes more cars off the road, so those people who really, really want to or have to use a car can use a car without sitting in traffic for ages.
Mm-hmm.
The Greens are into cars. Like, sorry, they're not into cars, but they are into roads. They are into infrastructure. They want it to be, you know...
Well, yeah, you need roads for public transport. You also need passenger rail, but you know, that's another part of the thing they'll never fucking come over on.
Actually, that's to be... If he said the Greens are into trains, I would have been like, yeah,
Right?
cool. He hit the nail on the head with that one.
Yeah. Trains.
National are into their cars, and Labour probably buses, somewhere in the middle. I don't know. We should all be into cycling. Anyway, carry on.
at a certain level, there does have to be a degree of political debate around these things. Like, I'm not one who says you can like completely depoliticize all this stuff, because you're dealing with Crown capital, you're dealing with multi-billion-dollar funding. It's important that people have different views on that, and it's actually to be expected in a democracy. But if you can agree on the fundamentals, that's a good step forward, and I think that would be welcomed by the sector. Take one practical example, for example, asset management. We've done that really badly in New Zealand for 25, 30 years. The Infrastructure Commission's done a whole series of reports over the last 4 or 5 years that point that out. By one metric, we rank last in the OECD in terms of asset management, 4th to last, I think, generally. One of those metrics, we're last in the OECD in terms of asset management. We subject local government to a whole range of different requirements around asset registers and asset maintenance plans that we don't subject central government to. So we make local councils go through quite a sophisticated process of, CapEx requirements and looking after the assets that they build, but we don't subject our own capital intensive agencies to the same scrutiny or requirements. And so, I've kicked off a program of work around changing that. It'd be good if we could get an agreement, and I'm sure it's part of the infrastructure plan that the Commission will produce next week. I'm sure there'll be some recommendations to that effect, because there have been already so far from them. If we could agree on something like that, for example, that'd be really good, I reckon.
I agree.
Sorry, I didn't mean to stop there right at the end. Okay, chat, let's be fair for a second here. You're going to hate me for this, Magenta. The Bish there made some really good points. And also...
Oh, I agree.
He sounded very reasonable.
Sounds like a normal human being for a second.
He sounded like a normal human being. Like,
just a little bit.
He criticized it. Okay, this is a slither of him and his entire MP career. Like, but in this very moment, I listened to that and I went, he is a reasonable dude. He's making reasonable points. And I do agree, maybe the councils have more scrutiny than what the government have, this is so different to what we get from the likes of Seymour. And Seymour's whole thing is like, the councils should have less control, blah, blah, blah. They should focus on this, and this. He sounds like a human being, this guy.
Yeah.
Like he's having a genuine conversation. Like, am I, like, we kind of have to agree with that, right?
Oh, no, yeah. Like, there's definitely some points in there that I'm like, yes. But also, bad asset management, like the fact that a bunch of New Zealand houses were sold off, way back when.
And they're trying to sell off
a
lot of public infrastructure. Yes,
yeah.
I agree with all that.
Yeah. So it's like, yes, you're right, but I don't think you realize you're right in the way that the left think, basically, in that, yes, we should be doing that better, and maybe we shouldn't be trying to force Wellington to sell its airport shares, Maybe we shouldn't be trying to
pay for shit.
Oh, yeah. Like, maybe we shouldn't be trying to fuck over the Kainga Ora housing and all of that. Like, those are the assets we should be investing in. Or, I don't know, like a ferry that we could have had really soon. I don't know.
Kieran, I don't know if it's before or after or during this, but Kieran also does bring that up about this. Said, yeah. But, like, people are roasting me, but you have to remember that the reason I'm saying this, and it comes up in a later thing we're going to talk about, is that MPs themselves, and I feel like in National, there are factions and there are cracks, and there are those like someone like Chris Bishop, who I think is really good at playing the party game and following party lines and making sure he's in that party narrative so that he doesn't, make his party look bad because he's a politician, right? You don't want to be doing that. If you want to continue to be in your, front row seat of the party, or you want to be Prime Minister one day even, or just leader of the party. But they are individuals, and I think as individuals, they do want good things for the country. Sometimes they put in shit positions, and sometimes they actually have really good points about why they do things. Overall, though, this government is fucking us over. Don't get me wrong. And he is just as much to blame as anyone else. But there's this nice thing in this interaction where there is one little bit where he starts to go, there's a little bit of blame Labour, but it's not nearly as much as the sort of shit that we get from Nicola, who just cannot get off about, like, in Luxon and everyone else. Oh, it's Labour's fault. It's the last government's fault. Like, this is actually questions and answers, okay?
Yeah, productive, actually trying to have a productive conversation rather than...
Yes. And I do wonder if that's because of the people in the room, where it's him and Kieran, who I think have some kind of reasonable relationship. I don't know how you can, but the centre does exist. Just saying, there is a centre ground somewhere.
I mean, if they're bonding over sports, that's a good way to kind of find a common connection between you, even if you don't always agree on your political beliefs.
Yeah. All right, let's just see where
The
Kieran's
fact is
going
that wherever there is as much broad agreement on the framework and even the funding mechanisms, ideally, on the whole, then we're going to get a long way. We're not going with just absolutely agree with you. We can guarantee we will not agree on everything you've done. We think some of the things you've done are stupid, but the work in the infrastructure plan is a perfect example. What I would like to see is a commitment to you don't have a say what's in the plan, but you do have a process after that you review it and respond to it.
Yeah.
Now, that is on you, and that has to be in your words. But there's an opportunity there to work with the other side to actually identify where there is broad agreement and include that in your response.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I was saying at the start, is that we're going to have to respond, and I want there to be a parliamentary debate around it. And you've been well briefed by the Commission so far, and when the plan started to be developed, I wrote to everybody, your predecessor, and offered them a briefing from the Commission, and I understand a number of political parties have taken that up, which I welcome. So, this has ultimately got to be an infrastructure plan for the country, not just for the government. The Infrastructure Commission is statutorily independent of the government. Obviously, they work closely with us, but they have an independent role for that reason. And if you go all the way back to when they were set up back in 2018, 2019, they were done for that reason. So I think the statutory independence is important. So very, very open.
It's interesting he's actually talking about, this reminds me of something that Barbara was talking about, which she was here in Christchurch last week, is that they have Labour, I don't know about the other parties, but Labour have kept quite a good relationship with the Commission. And they are hearing them saying, what the fuck is this government doing? Because we can't plan and we don't know what to do. So they are independent and they do work across the political spectrum because they know that someday another government's going to be in, and they want to know that they have that long-term plan. So there is truth in that they, they are independent and they're not just shills. One would hope.
Well, yeah.
They kind of have to work across the political spectrum. They just want to get their shit done.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in theory, I love everything that he's saying. It's just you can't trust it from anyone on that side. I mean, we've already seen them go ahead and lie straight to the faces of New Zealanders since the election, and they haven't stopped since.
I think it's sometimes I do wonder that they are, I don't know if it's lies or they're just what they want as individuals is just not what the party, not even party, it's the fucking leadership, right? Let's just say it is a three-way coalition equally. It's not equal at all. It's fucking Luxon gets a quarter and the other two, no, it's not even that. Luxon gets what would it be?
I mean,
I can't think of one. He gets a slither of the pie. The other two
he just gets
the other
the
half.
back shots at the end of the fucking orgy. That's what he gets.
Yeah. So I think someone like Bishop and someone like Erica Stanford might have individual things that they might be able to control, and it's like a tiny bit they control. But the leadership at the top is saying regulatory standards bill, the treaty principles bill, fucking libertarian bullshit. Let's go after the transgender people. It's that sort of shit. So like, how are you supposed to? And then you have to go along with it because it's your party. Like, that's gotta piss you off. Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, if it clearly has to be tolerable enough, because he's still there. He's not walked out of the party. He's still been serving them. I mean, you can try to say that, like, oh, they don't necessarily aren't representative of who they are individually. It's like, yeah, but if you're kind of doing the work for that team, then you are enabling the beliefs and the consequences of those. Like I also like, I think this comment points it out really well for me, is just he's pointing out the issue while directing the answer in the wrong direction. Because it's like, oh, yes, you actually finally get it. I agree with you. But then you're just missing it. Like, you just missed it by that much.
Yeah. It's that kind of answer that's just missing the next step. But I think Kieran's doing a really good job of asking the right questions. I'm going to pay a little bit more. Sorry, guys. I know Bishop is probably boring you. But you get the little snippets of Kieran, and then it's like, hey, Kieran, hello.
Very open to that.
Just one follow-up on that. It's good that we're having the debate, but what I'm putting to you, you don't need to respond now. You can have a think about it if you like. But the government needs to respond to this plan. If you work with the opposition parties as part of that, and in your formal response, you can indicate where you have worked with opposition parties and there is agreement, I think that's going to stand in pretty good stead and certainly be welcomed by the sector, rather than having to wade through a parliamentary debate to try and find out where they stand.
Yeah, I'm happy to commit to that now. I'm very open to doing that. It just making the obvious point. It may require. We may not always agree. So for example, you guys have got to figure out where you're at on PPPs, for example, because you've had about 9 different positions.
We know where we're at with that.
Are you sure?
And yes, I am actually.
Okay.
And I've met with the likes of NIFCO and we've talked about it in detail and know exactly where we stand.
Okay.
This is one of the things that I'm actually trying to avoid, right? Is that we can't help ourselves. This is the game we're in. We talk about bipartisanship, but we also take every opportunity to have a crack at each other.
Well, you just said some of the stuff we've done was stupid.
Exactly.
So, you know.
Exactly. Right.
You call me
We can't help
stupid.
ourselves. This is entirely my point. But surely on the fundamentals, like keeping in mind that Barb Edmonds, on behalf of our party, who was the spokesperson at the time, wrote a forward as part of your document on PPPs as a funding mechanism.
Yeah. They're a procurement tool. They're not a funding mechanism.
Yep.
But yeah.
I agree with that too. But at the end of the day, surely we've got to take every opportunity to try and provide that certainty. And that's all I'm just putting it to you.
Yeah, I'm up for that.
I think Ian just says he agrees to some extent. But I think that shows how amazing Kieran is at being really reasonable about his ability to. And I don't know if this is because of the relationship he has. It feels like there is a relationship between the two where they can have that kind of discussion where they have those little jabs, but it's not the kind of shit that we've seen with Nicola Willis, who is so defensive. She's so defensive. She's on the attack when she gets asked anything or she gets criticized for anything. I mean, the interaction I saw there is so different, right?
I feel like part of that is that Bishop would also not treat other people as kindly or as jovially as he does Kieran, which obviously shows that, there's some buffer kind of thing going on between these two middle-aged white blokes, to kind of like have that conversation, which is great that Kieran's able to do that. But I guess it also just frustrates me how our government is so fractured in the way that, like, they can't hear reasonable arguments from strong, assertive women without making a fuss of it, without making it some, oh, greenies are just crying, or, oh, TPM are just being TPM. Like, it's very dismissive of those people. And I guess that's where it is. It's like, I think that's also where sometimes Labour can kind of seem like they can be a bit closer to that side than, say, the other two, is that they do have those kinds of things. I mean, it's great that they could have that conversation. I just wish that Bishop would respect other ministers the way that he respects Kieran.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Do you think, because someone like Chloe is a great example, because she's very passionate, and I totally get why. Like, it's it's a very frustrating environment, as we saw in that clip yesterday, to be in. It's exhausting to try and get actual answers. It's exhausting going up against lies after lies and just not getting your point through. But do you think that someone like her, and this, I think Martima's the same, that sort of passionate, do you think their passion comes off as aggression sometimes, and that puts them on the back foot already?
I mean, when it comes to misogyny, women having any form of an emotion can often be considered that, you know?
Yeah.
So I mean, there's just so much that's just so clearly rooted in that implicit bias that we love to try to pretend doesn't wholly affect us. Still quite a lot to like in everything we do and in everything sometimes we can say, you know, like even say sometimes we talk about whether Kieran or Barbara should be, say, potentially the leader of the Labour Party. And a lot of people say Kieran, but I'm like, there is going to be parts of that that is rooted in the fact that you feel more safe and confident in a man's ability to lead you than a woman. Like whether you like it or not, you can't deny it. There's definitely those types of things that, you know, you kind of really have to proactively work on deconstructing every fucking day for the rest of your life. But yeah, I mean, I always see that, like with, especially because, you know, like Marama, Tamitha Paul, our brown women especially, they get obviously dismissed and just absolutely like invalidated and when they're genuinely so fucking right. And it almost feels like that's kind of part of what kind of plays into it is that these fragile men are like, I don't like that a woman's actually able to point out the fact that I haven't done this well because that makes me feel some kind of way about my masculinity. And rather than go to therapy and actually figure that shit out, I'll take it out on a job that affects every person who lives in this country. And I mean, that's just reckless behavior.
Yeah.
And I did not expect this to go on such a tangent down to that, but hey, that's who we got.
Everything comes back to
go to
misogyny.
therapy.
Go to therapy. Yeah, I think there is I always find it really interesting to see the interactions between especially in obviously Parliament and in the House and the debate chamber is very different, and like it does get heated and you are screaming across a giant hall, like not screaming, but you are talking in a giant hall, which kind of means you there is screaming, but it's more of that you're in a big space, so you kind of have to speak up, whereas this is a small room and they're having a conversation and they like, there is a different atmosphere about it. But I did find this quite interesting because this just felt so different to Nicola Willis, who was just up in arms, and she always is so up in arms when she gets questioned about anything. Like, she can do no wrong, you know. She sits on her pedestal and she can do no wrong, and she will not admit, if anything, she'll admit wrongdoing of someone else. Like, she'll say that she has to do it because someone else made her do it. Like, it's never... I liked what Chris Bishop was doing there, where he was kind of agreeing, and, like, it was a conversation, you know? Like, I would like to see more of that. Despite the fact that we're in a fucked up government, sometimes I just like to see some humanity sometimes.
Especially because I would say a lot of people on the right, they're not able to say, oh, maybe I've changed my mind about this. Maybe we could actually find a compromise. It's, no, I'm going to stick my fucking heels into this one side. And unless you come to my side, I'm just going to be an insufferable, stubborn little bitch. And it's just, it's not a productive way to do anything. You're not going to get anywhere just trying to be like, no, you're mean. And you called me mean. You called me a bad thing. And then that made me lash out. And now, like, I'm just not thinking or processing very well. And I'm just emotionally reactive rather than responding with my fucking brain.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. I think we've had a really good discussion about that. You made some really great points. We've had a great conversation.
I also I created a hashtag earlier.
Bromance theory. Oh,
hashtag bromance
I like
theory.
it.
Let's start building theory. It. Right?
I love it. Kieran's gonna have something more to be embarrassed by.
Kieran's like, man, these two have got to stop talking about me. Like,
First it was Holly McAnulty, now it's the bromance theory.
yeah. I wonder which one he'd prefer, actually. If
think he'd
anyone
prefer the
wants to let us
bromance
know what Kieran, if
theory.
Kieran's team wants to let us know what he thinks about this, feel free to just hit us up.
We'll send him this clip.